spectrum of other photosynthetic pigments, plants also have what we call accessory pigments that allow the plant to absorb green light. For example, carotenoids are orange pigments that absorb green light. You can see here in the spectrum that their peak happens to end up in the green. So plants are not at total disadvantage. They do absorb some green light. They just don't absorb as much green light as they would all of the other colors. Chloroplasts are where photosynthesis takes place. You guys already know this. You also know that the chloroplast has the stroma, which is the area that's outside of the thylakoids inside of chloroplast. It's a watery portion of the chloroplast. You also know that the thylakoids are the little stacked pancakes that are here. And the chloroplast also has an outer membrane and an inner membrane, so make sure you label those things on your notes. Chlorophyll, the pigment that's involved in photosynthesis that absorbs light energy, is found in the membrane of thylakoids. So in each little thylakoid right here, it has a membrane just like the cell would, and in that membrane, chlorophyll is contained. So the reason that the thylakoids carry out the light-dependent reactions is because the thylakoids actually have the chlorophyll. This picture here shows us the accessory pigments that are found in photosynthesis in green plants. So this would be the accessory pigments found in a spinach leaf. The spinach leaf has chlorophyll A, has chlorophyll B, both green pigments, but it also has a pigment called xanthophyll, which is yellow, and a pigment called carotene, which is orange. The reason that you guys can see different colors of trees in the fall is because chlorophyll A and B break down first as the tree is ready for winter. So then you can see the other accessory pigments that are covered up by all of the chlorophyll that's found in the plant. So some trees are yellow because of xanthophyll, some trees are orange because of carotene, some trees are purple because of another pigment called anthocyanin. So fall is what allows you to see these different colored pigments. So now you can flip to the next page of your notes. What we're trying to accomplish in this lesson is to talk about what energy transformation takes place in autotrophs. Many of you would probably already be able to tell me that it's light to chemical energy, light energy coming from the sun being transformed into chemical energy in the form of glucose, but you may not be able to tell me how this occurs. So that's what we're going to accomplish now. So you already know the overview of photosynthesis. Two reactants enter the process of photosynthesis. That would be carbon dioxide and water. And light energy is used to transform carbon dioxide and water into glucose sugars plus oxygen. Oxygen being released to the environment, glucose being used as food for the plant. And again, like I said before, the energy transformation occurs here is that light energy from the sun is turned into chemical energy in the form of glucose. Feel free at any point in time to pause this video to be able to fill out your notes. I'm just going to continue through. You've also found out so far when you guys did the book work that there are two different reactions that occur in the chloroplast during photosynthesis. The two reactions are the light-dependent reactions, which happens first when the plant absorbs the light, and then the second reaction is the light-independent reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle. And the light-independent reactions happen in the stroma when CO2 is turned into glucose. We started talking about this with the models on the table the other day, and what we found is that chlorophyll absorbs light energy. And when I turned the lights on, I told you guys to tell your electrons in the chlorophyll to get excited. So you turned the models around so that you could see the red excited electrons that were found in the chlorophyll. Once light energy excites the electrons, the light energy has now been turned into chemical energy. That's because electrons obviously are in chemicals, so that's the first time we turn light energy into chemical energy. Now, the electrons then, when they get excited, they're going to jump up out of chlorophyll and they're going to head to what's called the electron transport chain. And eventually they'll get picked up by an electron carrier called NADP+. Electron carriers are compounds that pick up high energy electrons and transfer their energy to other molecules. You'll find out later that the energy that's now contained in NADPH, which is carrying electrons, NADPH is an energy molecule and it's going to transfer its energy over to the light-independent reactions to turn CO2 into glucose. Here's the picture form of what I just told you. Light energy comes in, it hits the chlorophyll. So when I turned the lights on, you guys turned your electrons around to make them excited. So the light hits the chlorophyll, the electrons get excited, they jump up, and they jump out of chlorophyll and head to what we call the electron transport system. Now, this is something we haven't talked about yet, but I will tell you the electron transport chain is what makes ATP. So ATP is created during the light-dependent reactions, and that energy will be used to do the light-independent reactions later. Then the electron transport chain sends their electrons back to chlorophyll to get them re-energized. So when I turned on the lights again, those electrons get re-energized and they get picked up by NAD+. So when NAD+ comes in and picks up those energized electrons, NAD+ becomes NADPH. And you can remember the difference between NAD+ and NADPH because NADPH has an extra letter to it. It has that extra hydrogen, and that's because it's carrying electrons. So at this point, you're going to work through these checkpoint questions. You can just write down your answers 1 through 6 off to the side of your paper. When you're finished with the checkpoint questions, Mr. Whitmer will come around and check your answers, or the substitute teacher. When they check your answers, they will not tell you the correct answer. They will only tell you what you have incorrect, and you can go back and fix it. You only may have your answers checked twice, so make sure you do a good job on this the first time so that you can get cleared. Once you get cleared, you'll get a 6 out of 6 because you'll have all your answers correct. But if you do not get a 6 out of 6 in 2 tries, you can take the score you have, or if you don't want to try again, then you can take a 0 out of 6. So the first checkpoint question is, which of the following wavelengths of light would chlorophyll reflect? Is it blue, B, red, C, green, or D, yellow? Okay, I'm not going to go through and read all of them. I'm just going to let the checkpoint questions stay up for a couple seconds. If you need more time, you can always pause the video. Okay, so now that you know about the part of the light-dependent reactions, we're going to put the two reactions together so that you can see everything happening. So here are the light reactions we were just talking about, where light hits the thylakoids and the electrons get excited. And when they do that, they make ATP and NADPH, both energy molecules that are going to get cycled over here to the light-independent reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle, to make glucose. Okay, here's the light-dependent reactions again in a little bit more detail. Light-dependent reactions take place in the thylakoid membranes. That's because that's where chlorophyll is located for energy absorption from the sun. This light-dependent reactions are going to use sunlight energy to produce ATP, which is also chemical energy along with glucose and NADPH, and ATP will be used to power the light-independent reactions along with NADPH. As part of this process, the electrons, when they get passed down the electron transport chain, ATP is going to be produced by this process, and then NADP plus will eventually pick up the high energy electrons and become NADPH. You can see this here. So 2 energy molecules are created during the light-dependent reactions, ATP and NADPH. And when they're done with the light-dependent reactions, they're going to head over to the light-independent reactions in order to turn carbon dioxide into glucose. In this process, we're going to lose electrons as they get taken away by NADPH. So water gets split apart to replace lost electrons to the chlorophyll here in the thylakoid membranes. And then that water, when it's split and replaces its electrons, will separate into oxygen, and that oxygen will be released into the atmosphere. It's what we call a byproduct because we don't need it in the plant, but it gets released to the atmosphere. After the light-dependent reactions occur, don't forget, before you move on, I forgot. There are 2 questions. Do you understand? Number 1, where will NADPH and ATP go after they are produced? And number 2, what is the purpose of the light-dependent reactions? Please answer those first before moving on. Okay, now the light-independent reactions. Again, they're also known as the Calvin cycle. Make sure you write somewhere in your notes that the light-independent reactions are also known as the Calvin cycle. I'll use those words interchangeably. Light-independent reactions occur in the stroma, which is the area outside of the thylakoids. What happens during the light-independent reactions is that energy from NADPH and ATP that was produced in the light-dependent reactions is going to be used to turn CO2 through the process of the light-independent reactions into glucose. So all the carbons from the carbon dioxide that are brought in are going to be turned into the carbons of glucose. So we need 6 carbon dioxides to come in order to make 1 glucose molecule, because notice there's 6 carbons in glucose. After the ATP and NADPH lose their energy during the process of the light-independent reactions, they give their energy to this process here to turn CO2 into glucose. ATP will go back to being the half-charged battery of ADP, and NADPH drops off its electrons here and turns back into NAD+. Guess where ADP and NAD+ go after the light-independent reactions? Where they're going to get cycled back to the light-dependent reactions to get re-energized. And we can see that in this picture right here. So the light reactions are going to use light energy to make ATP and NADPH energy for the Calvin cycle. In that process, the water molecules are going to be split to replace electrons here on the thylakoid membrane, and oxygen gets released. The ATP and NADPH energy get used up in the Calvin cycle to turn CO2 into glucose. And then the ATP, when it loses its third phosphate and loses its energy, it's going to go back to being ADP. NADPH, when it drops off its electrons, is going to go back to being NAD+. And both of these molecules are going to get cycled back to the light reactions to get re-energized. So NAD+ will come back, pick up more electrons, leave as NADPH. ADP will come back to the light reactions and get turned back into ATP. So this is a cycle process where energy keeps getting cycled from the light-dependent reactions to the light-independent reactions. And in the end, what we get is glucose, which is our final chemical energy molecule that will be used as food for the plant. So what you guys are going to do once everyone finishes up with their notes, Mr. Whitmer is going to walk you through the process of photosynthesis using the models on the lab table like we did the other day. And you will get in your same lab groups as you have been in before, so make sure you do that. And after Mr. Whitmer has gone over the whole process of photosynthesis with you a couple times, your lab group is going to make a video that explains the process of photosynthesis. You must include both the light-dependent and the light-independent reactions. On the next couple of slides, you'll find what you need to include, and you'll see all the requirements of the assignment. This is a 50-point assignment, so it's really important that you guys do a nice job of it. And with the video, you're not going to have to put your faces in it. You're actually going to be taking a video of the model on the table and you moving through the different parts of the model and explaining what's happening. So make sure you split up these parts evenly between your group members. You'll also be graded on that as well. So you must include the words that are going to be listed on the next slide. So those are words like chloroplast, chlorophyll, NADP+, things like that. Those will all be in your description of the process of photosynthesis. So what I would do if I were you is I would suggest writing out what you say first and then splitting up the words evenly between your group members and make sure you figure out who's going to say what when. At the end of the video, you're going to tell me the overall chemical equation that occurs during photosynthesis. So what goes in, what reactants go in, what products come out. And then you're also going to tell me the energy of transformation that occurs in photosynthesis as well. So make sure you tell me the types of energy. So this type of energy turns into that type of energy. And make sure you tell me where the energy actually comes from. If it helps, you can write down the equation and the transformation and then just pan over it in the video. And like I said before, no faces need to be in the video. Just show what is happening using the model on your table and your words. Okay, so here's a list of the words that you must include. So make sure when you guys write out your script before you start that you check off these words as you go. Make sure you have them. Again, this assignment is worth 50 points, so make sure you do a good job and make sure you separate the work evenly between your group members. Don't be nervous about saying funny words. Ask Mr. Whitmer how to say them if you're not sure how to say them, or you can look back through this video and listen to me say them. We also practice how to say the words in class. So the point of this is to make sure you're using the vocabulary, make sure that you're actually talking about things like NADP+, NADPH, electron carriers, etc. Once you're finished with the video, you're going to upload it to Canvas underneath assignments. So you will not go to modules, you will go to assignments, and you will upload it underneath the photosynthesis explanation video. Your video must be done by the end of class, otherwise it's a 0 out of 50.